I never planned to take a billionaire home in the middle of a snowstorm. The night started like every other night. I pushed my cleaning cart across the 78th floor of Hale Group, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly above me. At night, I was invisible. Just another janitor finishing his shift while the real power slept in warm beds. 3 years on the night shift had taught me how to disappear. Outside the windows, Chicago was buried in snow. Thick white sheets fell fast, slamming into the glass. The storm was getting worse, and all I could think about was my 6-year-old daughter, Lily, asleep at home. I wanted to finish early and get back before the roads became dangerous. That was when I saw her. She was lying on the marble floor near the executive elevators. One shoe was off. Her black dress was soaked with melted snow. For a second, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. Victoria Hale, the CEO of Hale Group, Richard Hale's daughter. She looked small on that cold floor, fragile, nothing like the powerful woman whose photo hung in the lobby. My first instinct was to turn away. Getting involved meant questions. Questions meant trouble. People like me did not touch problems like this. Then she made a weak sound and tried to push herself up. Her arms shook and gave out. I thought of Lily. I remembered telling her that when someone falls, you help them, even if you are scared. I walked over and knelt beside her. Her eyes were unfocused. Her skin was burning with fever. "I'm going to help you," I said softly. She tried to speak but couldn't finish the sentence. When I suggested calling security, panic filled her eyes. She grabbed my arm. "No," she whispered, "no security. My father, he can't know." Her grip loosened. The snow outside was falling harder. The temperature was dropping fast. I had 2 choices: call for help and walk away, or make a decision I could never undo. "I'm getting you out of here," I said. "Stay awake." Using my employee card, I guided her to the service elevator. My heart pounded as we went down. Cameras, logs, rules I was breaking with every second. The garage was empty. I helped her into my old sedan and turned the heat as high as it would go. My hands were numb as I scraped snow from the windshield. At the exit gate, I paused. Once I drove out, there was no turning back. I drove into the storm. The highway was nearly empty. Victoria drifted in and out of sleep beside me. I drove slowly, gripping the wheel, praying we would make it. When I turned onto Maple Street and saw my small blue house, relief hit me hard. "This is safe," I said. Mrs. Chen opened the door without a word. Together, we brought Victoria inside and laid her on my couch. As the storm howled outside, my house was warm, quiet, ordinary. I sat in my chair and watched her sleep, knowing my life had just changed forever. I stayed awake while the night dragged on, sitting across from the couch like a guard who did not know what he was guarding. The furnace kicked on and off, filling the room with warm air. Victoria shifted under the blankets, her breath uneven, her forehead still hot when I touched it with a cool cloth. Around 5 in the morning, the storm finally began to ease. The wind softened. The snow slowed. I thought maybe the danger had passed. That was when Lily came downstairs. Her small footsteps stopped at the edge of the living room. She rubbed her eyes and looked at me. "Daddy, you're home early." "I am," I said quietly. I opened my arms and she climbed into my lap like she always did. I held her a little longer than usual, breathing her in, reminding myself why I tried so hard every day. She looked past me at the couch. "Who's that?" "Someone who needed help," I said. "She's just resting." Lily nodded, satisfied. She leaned against me, already half asleep again. A little later, I heard movement behind me. Victoria was awake. She sat up slowly, confusion written across her face as she looked around my small living room. The toys, the drawings on the wall, the worn carpet. This was not her world. "You're safe," I said gently. "You passed out at work. The storm was bad." Her eyes filled with emotion she did not try to hide. "You brought me here." "I did." "You shouldn't have," she whispered. "Maybe," I said, "but I would do it again." She stayed quiet after that. By the time the sun rose, she looked stronger. The fever had broken. I made pancakes for Lily like I always did, adding a little vanilla because she loved it. Victoria stood in my kitchen holding a mug of coffee, watching us like she was seeing something new. "This feels real," she said softly. "I don't remember the last time anything felt real." When the roads cleared, I drove her back to the city. She thanked me, tried to offer money. I refused. 3 days passed. Then she showed up at my door again. "My dad wants to see you," she said. And in that moment I understood. Helping her had not been the end of the story. It had been the beginning. I didn't answer right away. I leaned against the doorframe and felt the weight of her words settle into my chest. "My dad wants to see you." Behind me, the TV played a cartoon. Lily laughed at something on the screen, unaware that my quiet life had just shifted again. "What does he want?" I asked. Victoria looked tired, not sick this time, just worn down. "He knows something happened that night. Security logs, garage records. He doesn't like gaps in information." "What happens if I say no?" She hesitated. "Then he fills in the blanks himself. And my father's imagination is never kind." I nodded slowly. I had lived my whole life avoiding powerful people, staying small, staying unnoticed. Now one of the most powerful men in the city wanted to sit across from me and ask questions. "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow night 7 at his estate." After she left, I barely slept. I dropped Lily at Mrs. Chen's the next evening and put on the only suit I owned. It still smelled faintly of old memories. Funerals have a way of clinging to fabric. The Hale estate didn't feel like a home, it felt like a statement. Gates, lights, silence that felt expensive. A man led me through long hallways into a study lined with books and firelight. Richard Hale sat behind a large desk, watching me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. "Mr. Brooks," he said, "sit." I did. "I want you to tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning." So I did. I told him about finding Victoria on the floor, the storm, her fear, her words about him. I didn't soften anything. I didn't exaggerate anything either. When I finished, he leaned back. "What do you want from my daughter?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. He smiled slightly. "Everyone wants something. I want to raise my daughter. I want to keep my job. That's it." He studied me for a long moment. "You understand I could ruin your life," he said calmly. "Yes," I answered. "And you would still do it again?" "Yes." The silence stretched. Finally he stood. "You may go." As I walked out, I didn't know if I had passed a test or failed one. I only knew this was not over. The changes didn't come all at once. They arrived quietly, like pressure building under the surface. 2 weeks after I met Richard Hale, my landlord raised my rent. $300. He blamed the market. I didn't argue. I went home, opened my notebook, and adjusted my budget. Then the school called. They said they had concerns. Questions about my work hours, about stability, about supervision. Mrs. Chen came with me and shut it down fast, her voice sharp and fearless. Still, I felt watched. The last sign was my car. I finished my shift and found it dead in the garage. A mechanic later said the damage didn't look like wear and tear. I didn't ask more questions. I didn't need answers to understand the message. You exist because we allow it. That night I called Victoria. "This is your father," she said quietly after I told her everything. "He's testing you." "I don't want to be tested," I said. "I know," her voice shook. "I hate this." "I can handle pressure," I said. "Just don't step in yet." She was silent for a long time. "If Lily is ever at risk, I'm ending this." Agreed. Then the photo appeared, a blurry shot of Victoria and me in a parking lot, snow falling lightly, her laughing, my hand on her arm. By evening it was everywhere. Headlines twisted the story into something ugly. Reporters camped outside my house. Lily was scared. The next day my supervisor put me on leave. Paid for now. Victoria came over that night, slipping in through the back door. She looked exhausted and angry. "I'll end this," she said. "I'll speak publicly. I'll stop it." "That will make it worse," I said. She stared at me. "Then what do we do?" "We tell the truth," I said, "and we don't run." She sat beside me, her hand finding mine. For the first time, we didn't pretend this was just kindness. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I said, "but fear doesn't get to decide for us." Outside, cameras flashed. Inside, we sat together, holding steady, knowing the storm hadn't passed yet. The emergency board meeting was called the next morning. I didn't see it, but I felt it. Victoria called me before she went in. Her voice was calm in a way that meant she was holding something back. "They think I'm a problem now," she said. "A risk." "What do you want to do?" I asked. There was a pause. "I want to stop hiding." Hours later, she called again. This time she was quiet. "My father asked me to step outside," she said. He wanted to speak to the board alone. I imagined her standing in a hallway of glass and steel, alone again, just like that night on the floor. 10 minutes later, Richard Hale called her into his office. She told me everything that night sitting at my kitchen table while Lily colored nearby. He tested you, she said, harder than he admits, and you didn't break. I shook my head. I wasn't trying to prove anything. That's the point, she said. You didn't know you were in a test. Richard had gone back to the board and made something clear. Anyone who disrespected me or my daughter would answer to him. Anyone who confused gossip with business could leave. He apologized, Victoria said, still sounding surprised. To both of us. Life didn't change overnight, but the pressure stopped. The cameras left. My job came back, better than before. Then Richard called me himself. He invited me to help with a new company program. Better pay, better hours. Real support for workers like me. I didn't want to accept. I don't want charity, I told him. It's not charity, he said, it's respect. Spring came quietly. The snow melted. The world softened. Victoria came over more often, not as a CEO, not as someone's daughter, just as herself. One afternoon, Lily asked, "Are you going to stay for dinner again?" Victoria smiled. "If your dad lets me." I looked at them and realized something had already changed. This was no longer about storms or secrets or tests. This was about choosing each other even when it was hard. The world didn't end the way people online predicted it would. The headlines faded. The comments moved on to new scandals. Life, stubborn and ordinary, pushed forward. I went back to work, but not the same job. My hours were better. I saw Lily every night. I still wore work boots, still packed my lunch, still lived in the same small house. The difference was that I wasn't invisible anymore. Victoria didn't change overnight either. She still had meetings, still carried the weight of a company on her shoulders. But when she came to my house, she breathed differently, slower, like she could finally rest. One evening, she sat on the couch while Lily showed her school drawings. "This is our family," Lily said, pointing to a picture with 3 stick figures. Victoria froze. I watched her swallow hard. "It's beautiful," she said. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Victoria stood by the window. "My whole life has been about control," she said. "My father's, the boards, the markets." "And now?" I asked. "And now I don't want to live like that anymore." Her phone buzzed. It was her father. "He wants us for dinner," she said. "Both of us, Lily too." I felt that old tension return, but it was weaker this time. The dinner wasn't formal, no speeches, no tests. Richard watched Lily talk about school. He listened. Really listened. "You did well," he told me quietly as we walked outside later. "You didn't try to become something you're not." "I wouldn't know how," I said. He nodded. "That's your strength." On the drive home, Victoria reached for my hand. "Thank you for not walking away," she said. "I never considered it," I answered. Because somewhere between a snowstorm and a breakfast table, she had become part of my life, and I wasn't letting go. Spring settled in slowly, like it was unsure it was welcome. The yard in front of my house started to show green again. Lily wanted flowers. Victoria came with her to choose seeds, crouching in the dirt without caring about her clothes. "Gardens are about patience," she told Lily. "You can't rush them." Lily nodded seriously. "Daddy says good things take time too." Victoria looked at me like that meant more than Lily knew. The invitation came a week later. Family dinner. Richard's words. Not formal, not optional. This time it didn't feel like a challenge. It felt like a door opening. The estate was still overwhelming, but Lily didn't notice. She ran across the lawn like it was any other yard. Richard watched her, something soft crossing his face. At dinner he asked me about my wife, about Lily, about my plans. "No traps, no pressure. I spent my life believing power was protection," he said quietly. "But power didn't help my daughter that night." "You did." Victoria reached across the table and squeezed my hand. On the way home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat. Victoria whispered, "I think he finally understands." "So do I said. A month later, the tulips bloomed. Red, bright, exactly where Lily had planted them. Victoria stood on the porch, shoes off, laughing as Lily showed her each one. Mrs. Chen watched from next door. "Life has funny timing," she said. "Sometimes it waits until you're tired enough to listen." That night after Lily was asleep, Victoria and I sat together in silence. "I don't know where this leads," she said. "I don't either," I answered. "But I know where I want to be." She rested her head on my shoulder. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next problem. I was just living. The tulips stayed bright for weeks, even after the rain came. Lily checked them every morning before school, touching the petals like they might disappear if she didn't. Victoria started coming over on Sundays without planning ahead. No schedules, no assistants waiting in cars, just her, carrying groceries like a normal person. One afternoon she stood in my kitchen and said, "I turned down a board dinner tonight." I looked at her. "You never turn those down." "I know," she said, "but Lily asked me to help with her reading." Lily grinned like she'd won something big. That was when I understood. This wasn't temporary for her. Richard called less often, but when he did, his voice was different. Calmer. Once, he asked me how the flowers were growing. I told him Lily was in charge of watering. He laughed. "You're doing something right," he said. Life wasn't perfect. Money was still tight sometimes. Victoria still had hard days. But the fear that once followed us had faded. One evening, as the sun set behind the houses, Victoria sat beside me on the porch. "My whole life I thought strength meant standing alone," she said. "Now I know it means choosing who you stand with." Lily ran over holding a drawing, 3 figures again. This time, they were holding hands. "This is us," she said proudly. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She looked at me, waiting. Not demanding, just asking. I nodded. That night after Lily fell asleep, Victoria stayed. Not because of a storm, not because of fear. Because she wanted to. Weeks later, Richard came to dinner at my house. He sat at my table, ate my food, and thanked Mrs. Chen for dessert. Before he left, he shook my hand. "You didn't just help my daughter," he said. "You reminded me what matters." After he drove away, Victoria leaned into me. "I think this is home," she said. I looked at the quiet street, the soft glow from the windows, the life we had built piece by piece. "It is," I said, and for the first time I knew it was true.